A 67-year-old mechanic was driving his tow truck on Highway 95 when he spotted something that made his blood freeze: a van loaded with explosive devices heading straight toward downtown. What he did next with his 18-wheeler shocked the entire nation and saved 200,000 lives. Welcome to True Hero Stories. Before we begin this heart-stopping tale of split-second heroism and deadly highway action, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor the everyday heroes who risk everything to protect innocent lives. Frank Morrison had been fixing engines for 43 years, and in that time, he had learned to listen to the sound of machinery the way other men listen to music. At 67, his hands bore the permanent stains of motor oil, and his back carried the ache of decades spent hunched over engine blocks. But his mind remained as sharp as the day he had first enlisted in the Army's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit 25 years earlier. The irony of his current life wasn't lost on him. The same hands that had once defused improvised explosive devices in the mountains of Afghanistan now rebuilt alternators and replaced brake pads in a small garage on the outskirts of Phoenix. The same mind that had calculated blast radii and analyzed detonation patterns now diagnosed transmission problems and estimated repair costs for customers who had no idea that their friendly neighborhood mechanic had once been one of the military's most skilled bomb disposal specialists. Frank had left the Army in 1998, not because he was forced out, but because 25 years of wondering whether each wire he cut would be his last had finally caught up with him. The nightmares had started small, brief flashes of red and yellow wires, the metallic taste of fear, the sound of his own breathing inside a bomb suit. But they had grown stronger over time until Sarah, his wife of 30 years, had gently suggested that maybe it was time to find a different way to serve. Morrison's auto repair wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Frank took pride in solving problems, in taking something broken and making it whole again. His customers trusted him because he was fair, reliable, and never charged for work that didn't need doing. What they didn't know was that their mechanic carried within him the accumulated knowledge of thousands of explosive devices, hundreds of successful defusals, and the hard-earned wisdom that came from 25 years of making life-or-death decisions under pressure. On Tuesday morning, October 17th, Frank was driving his tow truck along Highway 95, heading to pick up a disabled vehicle near mile marker 127. The truck was a massive Ford F-550, equipped with a heavy-duty winch and reinforced bumpers designed to handle vehicles up to 20,000 pounds. Frank had owned it for 12 years, and like everything else in his life, he maintained it with meticulous care. The engine ran smooth, the brakes were recently serviced, and the winch cable was inspected monthly. The call had come in around 9:30 a.m. from a woman whose Honda Civic had broken down on the shoulder near the Carefree Highway interchange. Engine problems, she thought. Maybe the alternator. Frank had quoted her a fair price for the tow and estimated arrival time, the same routine he had followed hundreds of times over the past decade. It was supposed to be a simple job: hook up the car, tow it back to the shop, diagnose the problem, give the customer an honest estimate. But as Frank crested the hill near mile marker 132, he saw something that made his blood freeze and his military training snap back to life with crystal clarity. A white panel van was traveling in the left lane, approximately 400 yards ahead of his position. Under normal circumstances, Frank wouldn't have given it a second glance. Commercial vehicles were common on Highway 95, and panel vans were as unremarkable as sedans or pickup trucks. But this van was different. Even from a distance, Frank could see that its rear doors were slightly ajar, held closed by what appeared to be rope or bungee cords. Through the gap, something was visible that made Frank's 25 years of bomb disposal experience scream danger. Cylindrical objects, metallic, approximately 6 inches in diameter. Wiring. What looked like digital timers. And, most alarming of all, the distinctive yellow color of commercial-grade explosives that Frank recognized from his military service. Frank's hands tightened on the steering wheel as his mind processed the implications with the speed that only comes from decades of training. The van was heading east on Highway 95, directly toward downtown Phoenix. In 20 minutes, it would reach the city center, where more than 200,000 people worked in office buildings, shopped in malls, and went about their daily lives with no idea that death was approaching at 70 miles per hour. Frank reached for his cell phone, but as he dialed 911, he realized the terrible mathematics of the situation. Even if the police responded immediately, even if they believed his report without question, even if they mobilized every available unit, they couldn't intercept the van before it reached its target. The closest police station was 15 minutes away. The van would be in downtown Phoenix in 12 minutes. 911, what's your emergency? This is Frank Morrison on Highway 95 eastbound, mile marker 132. I'm following a white panel van loaded with what appears to be explosive devices. The vehicle is heading toward downtown Phoenix. Sir, can you describe what you're seeing? Frank tried to keep his voice calm and professional, the same tone he had used when reporting to commanding officers during his military service. Cylindrical objects consistent with commercial explosives, visible wiring, digital timing devices. I'm a former Army EOD specialist, and I'm telling you this vehicle represents an immediate threat to civilian populations. Sir, I'm dispatching units to your location. Can you maintain visual contact with the vehicle? Negative. I'm in a tow truck and they're pulling away. You need to understand, if this vehicle reaches downtown Phoenix, you're looking at mass casualties, hundreds, maybe thousands of people. Frank ended the call, knowing that the 911 operator was doing everything possible, but also knowing that everything possible wouldn't be enough. The van was now 600 yards ahead and accelerating. In his rearview mirror, Frank could see no sign of police vehicles. He was alone on a stretch of highway with a terrorist weapon and a decision that would define the rest of his life. The calculations ran through Frank's mind with military precision. The van's likely target would be a high-density area, the financial district, a shopping center, maybe the airport. The explosive payload, based on what he could observe, would be sufficient to level a city block and kill everyone within a 200-yard radius. The timing devices suggested a coordinated attack, possibly synchronized with other vehicles or events. Frank pressed harder on the accelerator, his tow truck gradually closing the distance with the van. At 67 years old, with arthritis in his knees and reading glasses in his shirt pocket, he wasn't supposed to be making tactical decisions that would affect thousands of lives. He was supposed to be towing broken-down cars and explaining repair estimates to worried customers. But fate had placed him in this position, and his military training wouldn't let him drive away. The van took the exit toward downtown Phoenix, confirming Frank's worst fears. Through the partially open rear doors, he could now see more details of the explosive setup. Multiple devices wired together, digital timers counting down, enough destructive power to turn a city block into a crater. The professionalism of the setup told Frank that these weren't amateur criminals. This was a sophisticated operation planned by people who understood explosives and intended maximum casualties. Frank's tow truck was now 200 yards behind the van, close enough to see the license plate and the faces of two men in the front seats. They appeared calm, focused, driving with the careful attention of people who knew they were carrying deadly cargo. In his peripheral vision, Frank could see the Phoenix skyline growing larger, office buildings and shopping centers filled with innocent people who had no idea that death was approaching at highway speed. The decision, when it came, wasn't really a decision at all. It was instinct, training, and 25 years of conditioning that told him there was only one way to stop a bomb: contain the explosion in a location where it couldn't hurt innocent people. Frank floored the accelerator, and his tow truck leaped forward with surprising speed for such a massive vehicle. The Ford's engine roared as it closed the distance with the van, 150 yards, 100 yards, 50 yards. The men in the van noticed him in their mirrors and began to accelerate, but a panel van loaded with explosives was no match for a tow truck driven by a man with nothing left to lose. At exactly 9:47 a.m., Frank Morrison made a decision that would save 200,000 lives and cost him everything he had spent 43 years building. He rammed his tow truck into the rear of the van at 65 miles per hour. The impact was catastrophic. The van's rear doors exploded open, spilling explosive devices across the highway. The vehicle spun sideways, then flipped end over end before coming to rest against the concrete median barrier. Frank's tow truck, its front end crushed but its cab intact, slid to a stop 100 yards away. For a moment, the highway was silent, except for the hiss of escaping steam and the crackle of broken glass. Then, Frank heard what he had been dreading, the high-pitched whine of digital timers that had been activated by the impact. Even injured, even trapped in his cab, Frank's training took over. He estimated 30 seconds before detonation, maybe less. He keyed his radio and broadcast on the emergency frequency that all tow truck drivers monitored. This is Frank Morrison on Highway 95. Multiple explosive devices activated. Evacuate all traffic from mile markers 130 to 135. 30 seconds to detonation. Then he closed his eyes, thought about Sarah, and waited for the explosion that would end his life, but save his city. The blast, when it came, was smaller than Frank had expected. His collision had damaged the primary detonation sequence, causing only 2 of the 6 devices to explode properly. Instead of the massive crater that would have devastated downtown Phoenix, the explosion created a 50-foot section of damaged highway and a fireball that was visible for miles, but hurt no one except the criminals who had planned mass murder. Frank survived, though barely. Multiple broken ribs, a punctured lung, severe lacerations, and burns on 30% of his body. He spent 6 weeks in intensive care and 3 months in rehabilitation, learning to walk again and rebuilding the strength that the explosion had taken from him. The investigation that followed revealed the scope of what Frank had prevented. The van had contained 500 pounds of military-grade explosives, enough to level a city block. The target, according to documents found in the criminal's hideout, had been the Phoenix Financial Center during lunch hour, when more than 3,000 people would have been in the immediate blast radius. The 2 men in the van died in the explosion, taking with them most of the information about their organization and motivation. But investigators found enough evidence to confirm that this had been part of a larger criminal conspiracy involving multiple cells and coordinated attacks planned for cities across the Southwest. Frank's actions had not only saved thousands of lives in Phoenix, but had disrupted an entire criminal network by forcing law enforcement agencies to take the threat seriously and investigate similar cells in other cities. The media attention was overwhelming. Frank found himself labeled a hero, invited to appear on television shows, and offered book deals to tell his story. Politicians wanted to shake his hand, and the president called to thank him personally for his service and sacrifice. But Frank deflected most of the attention. He had done what any reasonable person would do in the same situation, he insisted. He had training that allowed him to recognize the threat, and he had the tools and opportunity to stop it. Anyone else with his background would have made the same choice. Sarah disagreed. Not anyone, she told the reporters who gathered outside their hospital room. Frank has spent his entire life protecting people. In the Army, he defused bombs to save his fellow soldiers. As a mechanic, he keeps people safe on the road by making sure their cars work properly. Tuesday morning, he just did what he's always done. He saw people in danger, and he did whatever it took to protect them. The recovery was long and difficult, but Frank gradually rebuilt his strength and his life. Morrison's auto repair reopened 8 months after the incident, with Frank returning to work part-time while he continued his physical therapy. His customers welcomed him back with genuine warmth, and his story had brought new business from people who wanted their cars serviced by the man who had saved Phoenix. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. 6 months after the incident, Frank received a visit from a delegation of current and former EOD specialists from military bases across the country. They presented him with a plaque that read, "To Frank Morrison, who proved that once EOD, always EOD." Your brothers in arms salute your courage and sacrifice. The ceremony was small and private, held in Frank's garage among the tools and equipment that represented his new life. But the respect and recognition from his former comrades meant more to Frank than all the media attention and official commendations combined. As he returned to his routine of fixing engines and helping customers, Frank reflected on the strange path that had led him from bomb disposal specialist to small-town mechanic to national hero. He had never sought recognition or fame, had never imagined that his military training would prove relevant in civilian life, and had certainly never expected to make headlines for ramming a tow truck into a van full of explosives. But life, Frank had learned, rarely follows the path you expect. Sometimes the most important moments come without warning, and the skills you thought you'd left behind turn out to be exactly what the world needs. Sometimes an ordinary Tuesday morning becomes the day you save 200,000 lives. Frank Morrison returned to work, fixing cars and serving his community, carrying with him the quiet satisfaction of a man who had faced the ultimate test and proven that heroism isn't about seeking glory. It's about doing what's right when everything depends on it. The tow truck was replaced, the garage was repaired, and life returned to something resembling normal. But Frank never forgot the lesson of that October morning, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when the moment demands it, and that the most important heroism often happens on highways and in garages, far from cameras and crowds, performed by people who never expected to be heroes, but rose to the occasion when lives were on the line. In the end, Frank's story became more than just a tale of one man's heroic action. It became a reminder that heroes work in every profession, live in every community, and carry their training and values with them wherever life takes them. Sometimes they're soldiers, sometimes they're mechanics, and sometimes, when the moment requires it, they're both. Frank Morrison's story reminds us that true heroism isn't about seeking recognition or glory. It's about having the courage to act when innocent lives are in danger. His 25 years as a bomb disposal specialist didn't disappear when he became a mechanic. Those skills were simply waiting for the moment when they would save an entire city. Have you ever met someone like Frank? A person whose hidden expertise or past experience prepared them for an unexpected moment of heroism? Maybe a veteran working a quiet civilian job, a former first responder who jumped into action during an emergency, or someone whose specialized knowledge made all the difference when it mattered most. Share their story in the comments below. Tell us about the everyday heroes in your life, the people whose training, experience, and courage have made a difference when lives were on the line. Your story could inspire our next video. If Frank's story moved you, hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need to hear these incredible tales of split-second heroism and life-saving decisions. And don't forget to subscribe to True Hero Stories. We publish these powerful narratives every week because we believe that real courage deserves recognition, no matter how humble its circumstances. From which city are you watching today? Drop your location in the comments. We love seeing our global community of people who understand that heroes drive tow trucks, work in garages, and make split-second decisions that change everything. Remember, the person fixing your car, delivering your food, or driving the truck next to you on the highway might just be the person who saves your life when no one expects it. Heroes are everywhere. You just have to know how to recognize them. Thank you for being part of the True Hero Stories family. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, never underestimate the power of experience, the importance of training, and the quiet heroism of those who protect others without asking for anything in return. Where are you watching from? Share your city and tell us about an everyday hero you know.